right. Well, welcome everyone, and to continued visitors, welcome back to our 5th installment in our webinar series, Building Community Capacity for Change in a Crisis. I mentioned this is our fifth part in the 7-part series, and today we'll be talking about youth engagement, called Youth Count, Engaging Youth in COVID-19 Crisis Recovery. Just want to give a few more seconds to let people kind of fill in. But attendees are piling in right now. We've got just over 100 right now already in attendance. So welcome everyone as you come in. Just want to give a few more seconds before we really before we begin. Okay. All right. So just want to go over a bit of housekeeping as we get into this. Of course, this webinar is going to be recorded, and we will share that recording back to all registrants. And everyone here is muted, but please do use the question panel in the GoToWebinar Manager to submit any questions or comments you have throughout the webinar. We will be answering or taking a bit of time at the end of the discussion to answer some of those questions. And of course, if anyone is having any technical issues, please feel free to contact my colleague Evelyn Heltzel. Her email is right here at the bottom. Couple seconds in case anybody needs to catch that. Any audio issues or anything, just feel free to shoot her an email, help with the troubleshooting. So, you know, we are a panel here from Community Science, and as well as a few people from Mississippi and other areas of the US here, but I want to get a sense of who the audience is. So I'd like to, if you all could take 30 seconds to fill out this poll, just kind of who you're representing today, where you're coming from, so we can kind of have a sense of who's here and who we're speaking with today. Okay. So far, it looks like a competition between community nonprofit members and research consultant evaluators, kind of the heaviest. Good portion of about 7% of students so far, so that's good. Like to have the good youth not only here on the panel, but also here to listen to each other, so that's fantastic. Let's give a few more seconds for that. Okay, well, it looks like we have a pretty decent amount of people in here, so let's see our final numbers. Okay, it's about 8% from the students, overwhelmingly a good portion of community nonprofit members, and a large portion also of research consultants, evaluators, and a little bit of members from community action groups or mutual aid, and then some also from foundations and government staff. So welcome, everybody. Again, please feel free to share your questions or comments, or if anything is unclear in the questions, and we will be sure to try and get to some of those audience questions a little after the discussion. And so today, moderating, of course, I'm helping. My name is Daniel Pagan from Community Science, but leading the discussion today is Brandy Guilford. And I will actually shoot that off to Brandy.
Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. We're so glad to have you join today. Thank you for making time to be here with us in this session. We wish you and your family well, and just hope that you're doing okay and staying safe and finding a way to manage with all that's going on in our country today. We're super excited about this conversation, especially because it involves youth and young people's voices, and that's such an important thing right now, having young people lead us to our future, especially during a time that could be full of hopelessness, and just sharing that there is hope, especially in youth leadership and youth agency. And I know it's what drives my work, and guessing drives yours too, because you're here today. So thanks for taking a breath and just making time to have this conversation with us. It's going to be very interesting. I'm Brandy Guilford. I'm a managing associate at Community Science, and my work is really grounded in disaster preparedness and recovery, especially for youth and their families. And again, I'm happy to introduce our esteemed panelists next, and to share a bit about what we'll be talking about today. So first, our panelists will tell you who they are, and then I'll share a couple of slides of frameworks about strategies for engaging youth in tough times like today. And then we'll start our panel discussion with 3 core questions for our panel. And lastly, we'll have a couple of questions from you all. And we know that we can't cover them all, but we did get the questions that you sent in when you registered. And we tried to think through those and meditate on some of them, and hopefully you're getting lots of answers here. All right, for a panel, for introductions, Raul.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raul Ochoa. I am a graduating senior at Gatesburg High School, Maryland. I am representing the Brothers Academy.
Thank you. Lisa?
Hello, everyone. I'm Elisa Orozco. I'm a youth activist here in Gatesburg, Maryland. I'm now an alumni of Gatesburg High School. I work and volunteer with a lot of different organizations that give me opportunity to work with amazing people.
Thank you. And we also have Mercy Watkins on the line. I think Mercy had to step away for just a second, but she is a student and she's doing work in Grenada and Duck Hill, Mississippi, and she was recently featured in a special in the Huffington Post for her work around climate change. You'll hear from her as well. Kevin Jennings.
Greetings, my name is Kevin Jennings Jr. I am in Baltimore, Maryland, where I serve as the proud and privileged principal of Joppa View Elementary School.
Thanks. Ramona? I think you're on mute.
Hi, my name is Ramona Taylor Williams, and I am the volunteer executive director for North Montgomery Citizens United for Prosperity. We go by MCUP, and I also facilitate the Seeds Initiative and the Creek Rangers program.
Thanks, everyone.
Hello.
And if you're just joining us, we're hopping into some frameworks that we're using to kind of contextualize our conversation today. One of them is the ladder for youth engagement, and we adapted this from an earlier version, and it looks like at all different levels that young people can work in, and how those of us who work with young people can support them, just really coaching them up this ladder as they become more involved in their leadership work, and also as they get a little bit older. And so it goes from learning and awareness and thinking about being at a very basic level to learning about challenges and solution, all the way up to consulting youth and then really working in partnership with them. And lastly, for youth to be the ones that are blazing the trail. And in this conversation today, we'll be talking all across this ladder on how youth are plugging in, and also the young people on this panel have also talked with me about how they didn't put in these words, but really how they've moved up this ladder because leadership is so important to them. So it will be exciting to hear about that. And then for our next place that we're grounding ourselves is also in the developmental chain, and it's really important to consider what is most appropriate to help that engagement along and to build the leaders of our future. And that's all the way from early childhood to the upper end and even beyond the middle school and the middle adolescence. And so our panelists here are representing that category, this last adolescence and beyond. And we're also really happy to have Principal Jennings on the line with us, because he's the one of us who is on that early end of the totem pole, which is really important for us to have too, because he's coaching those leaders up from the young age in elementary school. So our panel is covering the span. Another important point to mention is, for me, this is also grounded in work around disaster preparedness and recovery as we think about COVID and all the shocks and stressors facing all of our communities. And that literature really speaks to the importance of agency, and how sometimes we think about disasters and stress and how that's all about vulnerability. We need to protect youth and shelter them. But what we really learned is that, yes, youth do need some protection sometimes, but we also have to think about how can they help? How can they plug in? And so that's what this conversation is doing. All right, so we won't waste any time jumping into our discussion questions, and also sharing that when we initially sent this message out, asking you to join us in the conversation and crafting this webinar, it was when COVID was really in the thick of things, and it still is. But since then, we've been seeing so much civil unrest, and so we've had a lot of discussion in our panel about opening it up to include that, and the young people may also be talking about that. And I know that you'll be keeping it in your minds, and these lessons are relevant for all that's going on with the civil injustice right now and many other issues, and how we blaze that trail. And now we'll move on to our discussion questions. So as I pass this off to the youth on our panel to really start us off and kick us off with the conversation, our first question is, please give one example of the community leadership work you've done in the past. How has COVID-19 or other crises we're facing affected that work? And I want to just highlight that young people around the world are driving COVID recovery and are also continuing to work on causes that they care about that they were doing long before. And one example of that is that 6 teenage girls in early June put together a protest of over 10,000 people around Black Lives Matter. Young people are also doing lots around COVID. I'm going to give you 5 top things that young people are doing. Put in your pocket. And so the first thing is tackling misinformation through digital campaigns, social media, and other ways, and just helping to get that information out. We know from the disaster literature that getting information from trusted sources is what's most important, and having that information just ping you all over the place so that it settles into your brain. The second is that young people are supporting the elderly. And I'm sure Ramona will be talking about multi-generational leadership and like how important that is. So it's supporting the elderly by helping them get supplies and food, and also virtual company, and that's sometimes even socially distanced company, keeping everybody safe. The third is making masks and disinfectants and just supporting with supplies for those who need them. The fourth is launching organizations and groups that empower youth. So youth are training other youth to rise up at this time. And the last is where we're really going to situate ourselves today. That is continuing to build community resilience and driving issues that they care about both before COVID and just continuing to work on them. When we first had the discussion panels, one of the panelists was asking me, like, what do we mean by youth being involved in COVID recovery? And what we mean is some of those 5 things that I just mentioned, but what we also mean is continuing to build strong communities and knowing that that's about many different points, and that those challenges and areas of resilience and strength are unique to every community. So now I'm going to turn it over to our panelists and ask them to share about the work they were doing and what's happening now with COVID. And first, we'll start off with Mercy, and then shifting to Elisa and Raul. Mercy, can you talk about your climate change work?
Yes, ma'am. I am the president of.
Sorry, Mercy, you also missed some quick introductions in the beginning. I shared a little bit about your climate change and how you were highlighted in Huffington Post for your work. And if there's anything else that you want to share, feel free to do that too.
I'm Mercy Watkins. I'm 16 from Grenada, well, Duck Hill, and I go to school at Grenada High. I'm a junior. I'm also the president of the Creekers, the Seas Creekers. We are located in Duck Hill. We do a lot of community work. And as president, I conduct our meetings and I help pass them on, but I also have older people to help me push through them. The community work that I've done, we have conducted many meetings, and we have began to do leadership work in Duck Hill. We have started working on a green space last year, and we still have it. It was used to reduce the flooding because Duck Hill had so much flooding at the time when we started our work, and we used the green space to mitigate the flooding. And before we did the green space, we had meetings to figure out which plants and stuff would work. So before all of this happened, we was together and we did all this. And with COVID, we have to go through different ways in order to get our things done that we were doing before it happened.
Okay, and can you talk about just a little bit about what those different ways look like, or have you had to pause your work? And if so, what do you think things will be like as you continue?
Well, when it first happened, we did pause our work for a while. And then about a month ago, we decided that we would go to the green space and work, but we would try to at least keep 6 feet and we work without a mask on.
Okay, thank you. And the work that Mercy is highlighting is in Duck Hill, Mississippi. And the community does face a lot of flooding, even though it's not a coastal community. So there's been a lot of education around that flooding and work to support that recovery and build around climate change work as well. Elisa?
So work that I've done in the past was back in November. I worked with other students with the organization United We Dream. I was given the opportunity to be a leader and organize a walkout to support DACA recipients and their families. If you don't know what DACA means, it stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It's an American immigration policy that allows individuals who entered the country as minors and had either entered or remain in the country illegally to receive a renewable 2-year period of deferred action from deportation. So it also allows these individuals to be eligible for work and school. And on November 12th, an oral argument over whether to terminate DACA or not took place at the Supreme Court, which is where I found myself alongside with many students and individuals all over the country, standing and fighting together to keep DACA. This experience was very eye-opening to me as we worked for weeks organizing this walkout. We would print and hand out flyers all over the school during lunch, have poster making sessions after school, and educate other students on the importance of this walkout and why we were doing it. However, though, given the certain circumstances with school being closed and social distancing measures being put in place, it has been hard to actively advocate in person without fearing for our health. Despite these obstacles, though, fighting for what you believe in is becoming more important in our daily lives. Personally, I think authorities are now seen as someone to be cautious around, and I think that many individuals feel threatened and scared. These events during these past few weeks, I think is definitely something that has affected how many individuals see authority figures. Many people around the globe are putting themselves in risky positions, including DACA recipients, when attending protests despite the consequences, because the time is now to make positive change. So it's important to stand up for what you believe in, because sharing your voice does make a difference.
Yeah, I appreciate, it's a quote for a t-shirt about the time is now, your voice does make a difference. And I also really appreciate the stories you shared and other young people on this panel about just small steps that you took in the beginning to find your voice. And I know we'll be talking more about that. Raul?
So an example that I can give from my experience in the past 4 years of my high school career has been that in the program I'm in the Brothers Academy, we do soup kitchen. What it means that we go to the Lord's Table Soup Kitchen in Gaithersburg, and we serve people in that community who does not have food at home or who are homeless. All of this volunteering, all of these experiences that I get and other people in the program get, it's very valuable, because we just don't get the experience just by looking at a computer, looking at a video. We get hands-on, and that's what our program is mostly about. We need to be hands-on, we need to learn, we need to achieve things by doing them. But since COVID-19 started, we haven't been able to done soup kitchen. So what the Brothers Academy has shifted to has been food drives. We have been doing food drives for the past month, and we have fed over more than 1,000 families. in the Gatesburg area, and that is really amazing. And we just don't give boxes of food; we give milk every other weekend, and it has been great. As we always said, God is amazing because we cannot do these things without, His blessings. And yeah, it's just been very tough how all of this just shift from, having a place to go every week to serve people to go into a bigger location to serve more people that it's in need because of this.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And now I want to invite our adult panelists who are supporting, I shouldn't say adult because also the young people on here are newly in the adult threshold who have been leaders for years. And actually before that, I did want to mention one other thing is that Elisa and Raul are graduating tomorrow. They're one of many, many students participating in virtual graduations, and they're also having a car parade graduation today, and they are squeezing us into their schedule, as is Mercy at her cheerleading, things you have going on with cheerleading. So these young people are very busy, and we are all, I'm sure even those who are on the line who you can't see, just sending you lots of congratulations, and to Mercy too, who will be graduating soon, and hopefully not in this way. So that's a quick commercial break. And so now I want to pass it over to Kevin for you to weigh in just about how you were supporting young people. And I know that you're passionate in your mission and leading with love. And what did that look like before COVID? And then what's it looking like for you now with both your students and your teachers?
Okay. I echo your sentiments, Brandy. So congratulations, Raul and Lisa, for your graduating tomorrow. So I am in my third year as a principal here in Baltimore County, and prior to COVID, of course, helping to run my school, which happens to be a school very diverse, about 850 students from kindergarten to fifth grade, and building capacity in my students as well as my teachers. And I think just providing an instructional program that's rigorous and equitable and engaging, looking at different programs to help provide for the whole child. So that's academics as well as like the arts, because we do a lot of different things after school for like our after school program. So we were a very active a very active school in our community. Where we have a number of different activities that our students are being able to build leadership skills, even in our starting as early as pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. And what that looked like in our building is just giving them the opportunity to do different things, working with our PTA, working with our teachers, in order for them to just build the leadership skills. We had a lot of programs going on here, and I actually happen to be in the building today, and it's very weird, kind of eerie and sad because our students, our scholars are not here, our teachers are packing up, very different from what we are used to. And so prior to that, we were out in the communities doing different things. We have a student government that's our fifth graders and fourth graders run, and they were getting ready for different activities to do. Kind of like Raul mentioned, we actually were collecting shoes for some of our, I forget the exact organization, for cancer. We were also doing food drives. And so we were really, really doing a lot of different things. And then COVID hit, and it just truly, I think took us all by surprise. It changed our instructional program. And so what that then looked like was everything turned to a virtual programming. And that has hit us a lot as well. So to the naked eye, I believe many of people would say that we are, a very pretty affluent neighborhood. However, we do have people from all over in our community, and so the way that worked was a lot of our students, and some of our students rather, they may not have had the access to the digital software and just being able to have devices and computers the way we would normally have those in the schoolhouse. And so that has truly took an impact on education here for our students. And so as we have this digital divide, as we are looking at what happens, we noticed that there are a lot of our students that we did not get to see a lot, and they were not participating in virtual learning or the remote learning, as we would name it. And so that was really one of the things that we had to kind of figure out what we were going to do. As a principal, one of my major things was just having that conversation with our teachers of holding our kids harmless, leading with love, and really trying to make sure that academics is very important, but making sure that our children are safe, making sure that our children are available just around, because a lot of things are going on. So we didn't focus so much on the academics piece, and in the beginning it was more so just the well-being of our students who go to job review. And so that's really what we focused on in the beginning, and then it started to change. And honestly, we don't know where it goes to the fall. But right now, even as we end the school year, we're really still focusing on the well-being of our students and providing opportunities for them to still grow even while we are not in the brick and mortar building.
Thank you. And that's especially important. When we were talking, you had mentioned after school programming. We're all thinking about, right? We're thinking about math, science, art, those things that are during the school day. But and I know lots of our nonprofits on the line as well are thinking about, well, how do we provide programming outside of that school day piece? And then what happens with the virtual fatigue that may be going on because we're already doing so much education during the school day. And Ramona, I know this is something that you're going to speak to too, because we're also, you and I in partnership are providing and assessing leadership programs for school that are outside of the school day, but giving that support that's needed as well. Do you want to chime in as well?
We were caught by, as the entire country was thrown into shock when COVID hit. I'm going to focus a little bit on our most recent innovation, which is to stand up and to develop a intergenerational model of leadership development in order to advance resiliency in rural communities here in Mississippi, in particular in Duck Hill, which is in Montgomery County, but our leadership has grown to incorporate other counties in the adjacent area. We are funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to develop a community, which is the Community Leadership Institute, and also a Youth Leadership Institute. And we are doing that in partnership with a local foundation, Foundation for the Mid-South, who is our fiscal grantee. And then the Urban Institute and Community Science are our research partners. This is a very unique approach and strategy, simply because we are a relatively new, very small grassroots organization, and to have the opportunity to be funded first and foremost by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, but also more importantly, to have the research partners that we have in order to develop this model. In March, on March the 14th, the week of March 10th, actually, is when we launched our leadership institutes, both the Community Leadership Institute, the adults, and also our youth. Well, that was when COVID hit. So we had to, after being in the planning and the development process for what, Brandy, about a year, 18 months. For about a year, 18 months, bringing this whole piece together, we found ourselves having to pivot and look at how we would be able to do the delivery of the Leadership Institute, and from what perspective would we be able to do that from, and how would that look? So like everyone else, we found ourselves having to pivot from an in-person, one-on-one approach to a digital approach. Well, Initially, I thought that only thing we had to do was just set up Zoom and then have some Zoom, meetings and everything. And we would be able to just move right into this. Well, that was not the case. What we learned was we have in our leadership institutes, we have 25 adult fellows and 25 youth fellows. And what we learned was that we did a technology assessment. And what we learned was that about 90% of the fellows did not have the access that they needed from a broadband perspective to access the internet, but also the devices that were needed. The majority of our youth have phones, but they share devices with their parents or another family member. So that brought on an entirely different dynamic of how we would go about delivering this, our leadership institutes. We engaged the youth in the conversation, we engaged the adults in the conversations, and then we worked very closely with our research partners to develop a strategy and a curriculum, because it also caused us to have to rethink our curriculum. And now we went back to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, who was just very, very supportive and has been very helpful in helping us to devise that strategy. And we also work with RAND, the RAND Institute, I think it's called the RAND Institute. So from an intergenerational perspective for leadership, we believe that youth are our future, and we have a responsibility to prepare them for life's realities, and also to prepare them to be able to identify when systems are not working on their behalf, and asking questions like, why is it in some communities that those communities are more and better equipped, those communities are better resourced, those communities are more sustainable, and those communities have the ability to immediately respond when there is a crisis, whether it is a natural disaster or whether it is a pandemic like COVID. So it is important for our youth to be prepared as early as possible so that they will be able to recognize institutional and systemic racism, so that they will be able to know if our roads are crumbling, but the roads over in another neighborhood, those roads are well paved. We need to ask the question, why does that happen and why is that? And why do some communities get more investments in those communities than other communities? So our young people are it's very important for our young people to be equipped on how organizations run. One of the things that we do with the Creek Rangers, we taught them how to develop their organization. They developed a mission statement. They developed a vision statement. They developed a value statement, and they wrote that themselves. So preparing our young people for everyday realities in life, especially our children of color, who are automatically challenged, is what my life's work has been about and what it will continue to be about.
Thank you, Ramona. As always, you're incredibly charismatic, just like our panelists here today. All of us, it's the group that's really driving lots of work, and it's hopeful to hear about that right now with so much going on in the world. So thanks to each of you for kicking us off to a good conversation. So next, we're going to be talking a little bit more about, well, what do youth and those that support youth, what do they need to keep doing this work? And I have a little mini addition that I didn't get to share with the panel yet, but I was browsing through the questions that came in from people who registered, and someone asked also about what's the vision that you all have, especially for the young people. So I would say that sort of in addition to this question is, what is your vision? So starting with Mercy, what is your vision for the climate change work, what that might look like in addressing the flooding in your community, and what do you need to help drive that?
The vision for Duck Hill is to make it a better place because most people around here they treat Duck Hill like it's what it is, a little town. And I want Duck Hill to be more than what people think it is. And because we're between 51 and 55, I want the health of our elderly and our youth to be so much better in the town of Duck Hill. And for that to happen, we just need everybody to come together and have the same vision to get it done.
So sharing that vision among both young and residents of any age in Duck Hill, Mississippi. I hear you. And anything else about what you need for everybody to get on board about that kind of shared vision, especially for your climate change work?
When I talked to you earlier, I told you that I would have to have support from people that had the ability to do what I need to be done and the experience for it to all go through smoothly because one person can't do what I'm trying to do by themselves.
And have you found the Creek Rangers program helpful for you in having kind of a squad of people who share that vision?
A little bit. We have been looking for funding and we have been working with other people to try to slowly bring it together and start working on the vision.
Okay, so it sounds like some key needs that you're saying are funding, which we could all use more of to drive our work. So funding and also people support, especially people who are getting around that shared vision. Okay, thanks, Mercy. And next,
So if you're truly passionate and determined about a specific problem or challenge that might be going on in your community, you put in that work. I feel like no matter what you might face along the way. I feel like you should always start off by doing research. Learning more about your community and what could be done to help is extremely significant. My motto has always been always ask questions and not be because you're always learning, you know? So having a good environment that allows ideas to be thrown in and combined when sharing similar interests about like a particular topic can result in better outreach. Personally, my work environment is an important factor, giving me more confidence and the motivation to get more involved. Something that can allow people like myself to get more involved is having access to different resources. For example, more information on how to do outreach would be extremely beneficial, especially during troubling times such as now when we're faced with a global pandemic. I feel like such resources can provide to young students an opportunity in order to grow as a leader in their community. I think the best support one can receive is definitely reassurance and encouragement. Those two methods of support always tend to give us that confidence that we sometimes lack, I feel like.
And you're breaking up just a bit when you said about how to do outreach, especially to, who was that?
I was just saying like when being able to like for example like more information on how to do outreach would be extremely beneficial. I said like during times like now how we're living in the pandemic, you know, global pandemic.
Okay, and who would you want to do that outreach with? You think that's outreach to others in the community, to public officials, or other groups?
Yeah, definitely a lot of like within our community, different organizations that are willing to, you know, allow youth to come in and to work with, you know, other individuals that happen to be in this organization. So just to work together all.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks both Mercy and Elisa for your thoughtful responses. Thank you. Raul?
The vision that I have always had has been that to help the students follow their dreams, I would love to see them accomplish whatever their heart desires. And I'm becoming a teacher, hopefully. I'm becoming a teacher. And my vision is not just to, you know, go to the school and teach the kids what the curriculum is. It's there. Like, you know, you have a curriculum, you have a paper, and you do that. My dream is to teach them not only the curriculum, but life lessons, because that's what my English teacher did. We always came to class, and yes, there was the curriculum and everything, and the book. We always read the book, but at the same time, he was always saying a little bit of a life lesson. He always found a news article and said, "Let's put it together," and all this stuff. So it's nice to build students in that way to prepare them for life. It's the in the Brothers Academy, what we're doing right now is that we are building the students' strength to building the students' strength to be good leaders, to be good role models for their peers, to be good role models for their friends, to be good role models in the community and in their families. So every day, every time that we talk to them, every time that we encourage them to do something, it's always to be the person you want to be, but be mature and act the way that others can respect you.
So it sounds like you're really highlighting the importance of leaders building leaders.
Mm.
Like the
Yes.
importance of us all being leaders, encouraging other people to be leaders by like really leaning into them and supporting them. Yes. Thank you. All right. And how about Ramona and then Kevin? What do you all need to support your work, and what's your vision? Oh, Ramona, you're on mute.
Our vision is through the lens of the ACEEDS initiative, and ACEEDS stands for Achieving Sustainability Through Education and Economic Development Solutions, and creating communities, a model for that can be replicated in other small rural areas. I come from an urban environment, from an urban background, in community and economic development. And one of the things that I've noticed since living and being in Mississippi and working in the Duck Hill community is that the resources that we are accustomed to having available for us in urban centers, those resources simply do not exist in small rural areas, especially in states like Mississippi that have a history of not being fair, not being equitable in their allocations of public and private investments, and also in their development of public policies. So my vision is that we will be able to carry out the dream of this community by making it more sustainable, more resilient, but also by turning Duck Hill, as we say in the children in the community like to say, putting Duck Hill on the map. And through the initiative, we've had the opportunity to do that. Our motto has received national recognition, and I want to give acknowledgement to who made this possible, which was the Southeastern Sustainability Directors Network, SSDN, and the Condita Fund. Duck Hill was one of 6 communities. We were in competition for a $300,000 grant that was over a 2-year period of time, and we were competing with the entire Southeast region. Now that was 9 states and some big cities, and Duck Hill is a town of 1,184 people. So for them to have put the confidence in us to allocate those resources so that we would be able to stop the flooding that this town and this town and community had been experiencing for decades. The flooding was like the main street would look like a river when they had downpours. Today, Duck Hill does not flood. And so that is testimony. And, you know, we had engineering firms come in. They told us that we would never be able to do it for that amount of money. And we did it for less and did many, many, many other things around community building, community organizing, our Seeds Creek Rangers and Youth Development Program. So what do we need? I'm going to say we need the resources in order to carry the work on. Our next mission for phase 2 is called Duck Hill Together. And our dream is to envision for the community is a Main Street revitalization initiative and also the restoration of a beautiful historic high school that has been closed vacant for 20 years. It's called the Benford High School, and it has just some really amazing history behind it. It was the high school that was the Jim Crow High School. It was the Jim Crow High School. And so now the community has come together, and we're coming together, as we say, Duck Hill Together, so that we will be able to restore the building, and the building will be repurposed into a center for arts, culture, and social impact. I do want to lift up a little bit about the power of data and informing residents and educating them to the importance, and our youth to the importance of data, and having real-time data and communities owning their own data. And that's why it is so important, and we're just so grateful for the partnership that we have with Urban Institute and with Community Science, so that we will be able to collect our own data that is participatory by the resident. And so we have an initiative that's called Data as a Defense, because sometimes you have to put it right in folks' face in order for them to acknowledge that we have discrepancies and we have disparities in our communities. And they may not want to hear it, but the data is what speaks. So having that data is so important, and learning to love data. And that's one of the things that we instill in our young people. You have to know your community through the lens of data. And that is how we build our defense for equitable public policies and investments in our communities. And I think, Mercy, I probably drive that in you all's head all the time, huh? Yeah. So
thank you. Thank you so much for highlighting the importance of resources, especially when resources haven't been allocated equitably, and of data. Thank you, Ramona. Kevin, do you want to round us out here on what do you see as the key needs?
Absolutely. So I know part of the question was like, what's the vision? And so I have to be honest and tell you, our vision for the school, our vision for our young people, and mine overall hasn't changed. Part of that is to prepare our students to be successful throughout their education and the competitive world beyond. Is to make sure that we have respectful and responsible citizens who are globally competitive, and so that continues to be a vision for my students here. And it's just right now, how do we get to that? So the streamline of how we are going to obtain that vision has changed a little, because we're no longer in this brick and mortar building where I'm standing in front of my students or coaching them when I see them every single day. And so we have to do some things that we've probably never done before. I had a conversation with my teachers when I said, one thing for sure is we don't know how school is going to start back. And because what we can say is it's not going to be like any other experience that I've ever experienced in the 15 years that I've been in education. Some of the things that we have to have is love. we need compassion, we need grace and understanding, and that's all around. We need that as educators working with students from pre-K all the way up. We need that working with our community and our parents and the adults. And I believe I need to have that and express that with my teachers, and they need to have the same with me, because we are really treading on a new path that we've never traveled before. Some of the things that I need more so is for us to really call out what's happening. We are experiencing this pandemic as far as COVID, but we are also really in an atmosphere in our world right now where, this racially divided era of what's happening with racism that is going on, and it's just blatant right now. We need to be honest about that. And I think sometimes it's been conversations that we've had to either protect students or protect our children or prepare them. And I think we need to do not one or the other, but we need to do both and. We need to protect our students, but we also need to prepare them for what's out here. We need to really think about what we're asking families, knowing that some families don't have what others do. And so I wish we could kind of level the playing field. I don't have the complete answer, but being understanding and providing that grace. When we even just think about the technology divide that we have, where some students don't have technology at home, or we talked about, I have students who are working on phones that their parents use every day, or they just have tablets at home. But the expectation that we're having and setting forth, we're not being extending that compassion. There's a lot going on. There are families that we are working with who don't have internet services. And so all of those different things that we need are for our community to come together, to wrap hands around our children, to really show them what we need in order to move forward. And so we need to really come together at this point in time and call out those things are not good. That's not good. And harp on those when we have people like our young people that are on here today, and really celebrate them. And so I think that's something that we need to really focus on.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree again, and celebrating the young people who are here today. And again, many thanks. And if you're jotting down some notes on how you might be able to use this information, or what people might need, what you could advocate for, what you could do, I'm going to give you a quick top 10 based on what our panelists shared, all the way from Mercy to Kevin. So what do people need who are doing the work, young people, and who those are supporting young people? Number 1, funding. Number 2, a shared vision. Number 3, a good environment that allows for idea sharing. Number 4, information about how to do outreach, especially outreach to different groups. So that can be residents, public officials, across the board. Number 5, leaders helping to build leaders and walking together. Number 6, resources, especially in places where resources have not been allocated equitably, and thinking about areas that may be overlooked, like rural pockets and even some urban pockets. You have to think about what that area might be in your community. Number 7 is students who are globally competitive. Number 8 is love, compassion, grace and understanding. Grace and understanding. And number 9, I'm keeping up with my numbers. I think I'm on 9. Number 9 is what Kevin just mentioned about calling out injustice in both protecting and preparing our kids. It's just like the pendulum swinging that I talked about with that we talk about in disaster research, about vulnerability versus agency. It's not one or the other. We have to recognize that young people and all of us have some vulnerability, but also huge agency. So I like to say that it's not either or, it's and. And lastly, recognizing the virtual challenges we're facing and how we address them in many different contexts. So we have about 20 minutes left, and thanks for you. There are lots of people who were here in the beginning, who are still on the line tuning in, and I want to spend time just having a few minutes for questions at the end. But before then, we're going to shift to our very last question, and we're going to ask our presenters to keep this pretty brief so that we have time for those questions. And this time we'll start in the reverse order. So beginning with Raul, and then Elisa, and then Mercy. So for this question, what do you, and also for everybody on the line, this question is what spurred the most conversation, even though we're shortening it here when we had our practice session. So there's lots to say here. So what do you wish adults knew or did differently when partnering with youth in times of crisis? And what should youth keep in mind in partnering with one another? And it seems like most people are sort of centering their answers on the first question, and that's fine. But if you have anything to add on the second, feel free to do that too. Raul, you want to kick us off?
Every time that I work with an adult, I like for them to know upfront that I know that they plan things out and everything, but sometimes as a young person, we have always a backup plan, you know? We are always thinking outside the box. We always see the things that a lot of people cannot see. We hear the things that a lot of people don't hear. Just, you know, we are kind of a ghost to a lot of people. That's how I like to put it.
Like
because you know, we're not supposed to be there even though we're there, that kind of thing. And when something is not working, it's hard to make it work quicker. So what we do is, like, you know, here we are, we make things work, we all hands on deck kind of thing. And we just I always tell the adults that I'm working with, let me do it, and then you tell me if you like it, that kind of thing. And it's not that they will not like it, it's because we're gonna do it quicker with the other people I'm around with. So we do it quicker. We always have that plan B. And they all should always have in mind that even though we don't have a lot of experience, we don't have their experience, but we're getting our own experiences from, you know, from the short life that we have lived. We know what's happening in the 21st century. That's how I like to tell my parents too. I always tell them, I know what's happening in the world right now, and even though that you don't understand what's happening, I do. And I know how to fix this. I know how this can work out. So just keep in mind that we always have a plan B. Even though we don't have a lot of experience, we really do have the experience that we need for certain things.
Thank you, Raul. And it sounds like, if I could lift up your message, that it's back up. But lean in, because what you all just said on the second question was like, we want encouragement, we want support, we want grace, that kind of thing. So it's like, back up, give us space, give us room for thinking, but also lean in. And somehow we have to figure out how to do both at the same time. So if you're on this webinar, I hope that's a message that is really helpful for you and that you can take into your work. Back up, but lean in. All right, Elisa?
So unfortunately, you know, there are and will be times where adults may not agree with what the youth might be advocating for. But I think it's important to remember that it's during these times where patience is key when partnering with youth. We know with society and culture constantly changing around us, it's usually the youth that are in the middle of it, whether being on social media or from personal experience. Even now we see youth leading and being in charge, like organizing protests, you know, going on and spreading the word. But at the same time, we need to take into consideration that we are still learning and we may make mistakes, which is very important for not only adults to know, but also when working with other youth activists, you know. However, like, it is these mistakes that provide us learning experiences and it helps us make us better leaders. But the youth needs to support the youth needs the support of adults rather than their opposition and hearing the words like, you're just a bunch of teenagers. But that's exactly the point. Like, we're a bunch of teenagers that we're growing, you know, we're the future. You know, advocating actively for something we believe in with the support of adults makes such a huge difference as our hesitant to act decreases. And You know, I volunteered and worked with many adults before, and luckily each one of them has been very supportive and welcoming. Such mindsets have always, like, you know, been important, especially when working together on issues that involve our community.
Thank you. Mercy? Oh, you're on mute.
My bad.
I just
Okay.
personally believe that adults should just have patience and not just think of you differently because of your age. Because I know a lot of young people that have wisdom and can do this. I wouldn't say the same thing that adults can do because every person's mindset is different. But if you put it together, it'd be easier than you fighting against each other because of your age difference.
Thank you. Thanks for
I
that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just think you should keep in mind that the adult does have a little bit more experience and they can still help you throughout the process of getting it done. So they should just be open to the fact that maybe their ideas can help the situation a little bit more because they've probably done it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's good to keep that in mind, but just important about how that help comes, you know, like that help still allows space for youth to be in that front end. And if we think about that ladder that we shared in the very beginning of our conversation about, especially when you're in places where youth are at that top of the ladder, just giving them that space, but still being supportive when you're in a youth-driven environment. So thank you. Thanks to all of you. And we did save this question for the youth, but we also wanted to ask Ramona and Kevin if they had anything briefly to chime in before we hear a few questions. Ramona, Kevin?
Well, I would just like to add to what the youth have shared from an adult perspective, that it is very important to listen to the young people and also to take what they have to share under consideration. I know I learned from the young people that we work with, the fellows and also our creek rangers, all the time. And I tell you, if it wasn't for the young people, I would probably be very disabled technologically. So me, it is enjoyment, pulling on their energy, and it also gives me hope as I begin to, as they say, wind down, and in preparation for passing on the baton for to the younger people to do this work. So it's the intergenerational model is the model for me. You know, we need young people. I'm a great grandmother. So when I tell you my knees are tired, my knees are tired. And the young people, they run this race, and I just want to be able to give them the tools and the tools and the knowledge and the resources that they need in order for them to carry on this race that we've been running for 400 years.
Great. Kevin? Oh, I think we're having a quick technical issue.
Okay, I think I'm fine now. So I mean, I thank you all for that information. I was writing some things down, and I heard just for adults, for us to be flexible, for us to back up but lean in. And I think one of the major learning just in that is, adults, we like to do things our way, and at times we see us doing something a specific way, but it's for us to back up and realize that it can be done a different way. And so, I think that's really important, especially where we are today, just to continue to help support, continue to help train up and trust the pieces that we have given to our students, our children, to say, I've given this tool to you, this strategy to you. Now I want you to take that and continue to run on. So I definitely hear all that you said. And it's just really, as we can cultivate leaders, as we continue to empower young people, is being there to support them. If they fall, help them, brush them off the same way we would our kids, brush them off and continue to push them and encourage them to be persevering, resilient, strong, empowered young people. So I definitely support and hear what you said.
Yes, Thank you. Thanks to all of you. And I'm going to pass it over to my co-moderator, Daniel, to share some audience questions with us. And hopefully this discussion can continue to live on for all of you, wherever you are. And I also wanted to make a small note that you have the handouts, which is the PowerPoint slides and the bios of all of our presenters here today. It's in your tab called Handouts. We're over by where the chat function is. So check out some more information about them. Daniel?
Perfect. Thank you, Brandy. You're reading my mind. I realized I missed that in the beginning, so thank you. Really great. I think everyone just want to give a round of applause first to everyone in terms of sharing their perspective of the youth perspective. Everyone's been loving it and sending you out all love for, congratulations, graduates. We do have two questions, kind of more towards the youth. Throw them both at you right now. So first, who are you considering as leaders today? Like, are there people maybe you're looking up to in terms of role models?
That's good.
And secondly, people are curious, what are youth doing in this time, especially for their own self-care and taking care of their own mental health? And maybe, what are the needs that they have for their own mental health?
So who are you all seeing as models? What are you doing to take care of themselves? And what are like self-care needs? We'll throw that out for the young people on our panel to chime in. You don't have to answer everything, but wherever you want to share around those questions. Lisa, you look like you're going to say something.
I think for the first question, like who we consider as leaders today, I definitely think other youth activists, for me personally, only because I don't know it all, I'm still learning, right? And seeing other youth activists, doing what I do, what I like to do, I learn so much from just watching them. And I see them as leaders as well. They might be younger than me, they might be a little bit older than me, but I think that's, for me, that I consider them as my leaders,
Great. Others want to chime in on question 1 or 2? Raul, you look like you're about to say something.
Yes, can you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure. So the question is about, the first one is, who do you all turn to as youth leaders? And I know that you all, like some of this also came up in our conversation, that others in your family, like Mercy, I know that your grandmother is a big community activist and you're surrounded by Ramona as well. Elisa, you mentioned your mother is an activist in her community. So the first is, who are you looking to, whether that's adults or youth? And the second is, what are you doing to take care of yourself in these times? Like, keep your mental sanity. You talked to me about that before, Raul. You're on mute. There.
My role model. My role model has always been my grandmother. Sadly, she passed away 5 years ago, but she has been my role model. I look up to her for everything she did for my community back in my country. She always told me to follow my dreams, and no matter what other people say, you will get to where you want to be. She always took care of the people in need in my community. She always took care of our own family, even if you had food at home, people already know that going to my grandmother's house was just going to their own kitchen, to their own house, because my grandma took care of everybody and she didn't matter if you had money or not. You were the same person for my grandma. When I came here, I found another amazing person who we all call grandma too, and her name is Teresa Wright. Her soul is beautiful. That woman is the most amazing person that I have ever seen. And besides my grandmother, she's the second person that I look up to, because you will see her at her age, and she's 80 years old, and she works. She has more energy than I do. She has more energy than I do. Comparing everyone in our school is 3 floors, and that woman walks up the stairs like nobody. She goes up and down, and me over here, I'm going up the stairs, and I get to the 2nd floor, and I'm tired. And there's no words to actually describe her, because these kind of people you can just look up to, and you can just not describe their personalities. They're just amazing. They're just amazing, and for me, they're just a gift.
Thank you for that. Mercy, do you want to round us out?
Everybody answered the first one. I guess I'll answer the second one.
Perfect.
During the break, without being in school, I've been learning to stay sane. Being in the house all the time is a toll, I promise you. It's like you in the house all day, like, dang, I ain't been outside. And it's like hard being in the house. I know it's hard being in the house. But over the break, I got a job. I still do my Creek Rangers work. And on the weekends and stuff, I go to daycare and I watch kids and stuff. Our daycare here is still open. And I'm at home most of the time with my grandparents, and I just, take care of myself. That's what I do.
Thank you. So it sounds like our young people are really looking to those who are around them as their leaders. So know that if you're around a young person, it might be looking at you. Do the right thing. Blaze the trail, help them, most importantly, blaze their own trail, which is their message for today. And we're going to close out because we only have 2 minutes left. And I thank you to our young people on our panel. Thank you so much for being here. Again, thank you for making time for us between graduations and your cheerleading and your jobs and your leadership and activism. We appreciate you. We salute you. For Ramona and Kevin, thank you for the work that you're doing, both of you for decades on the front line supporting youth, and for being here with us today. Before I go to just a quick announcement here from Community Science, I want to share a quote that Raul said earlier, but it really echoes the sentiments of especially what the youth were saying. And he said, we don't have their experiences, but we're getting our own experiences.
Yes.
So please, blaze on, get your own experiences and continue to share your lessons along the way. And make this world a better place. And we know we need it right now, especially. So please continue on. And we also want all of you who are on the line to share in future conversations with us. Our next webinar in this series is June 25th about a webinar, continuous strategy improvement. So especially for those of you who are nonprofits or other organizations who are working around strategy and equity, please consider how this work might help moving forward and how you can chime into this conversation. And for questions and for chiming into the conversation moving forward, please check out the information that we have on the slide. Again, thanks to all of you, and we look forward to seeing all of your great work in the world. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
Thank you.